Thank you for watching Independence Associates' baseball special featuring Jared Carrabis of Barstool Sports. Independence Associates is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization located in East Bridgewater, Massachusetts that works with and advocates for persons with disabilities. We serve 31 cities and towns, and we provide supports and services to anyone with a self-identified disability. We are specifically on the lookout for young adults 14 to 21 years old to participate in our pre-employment transition services program once a week for an hour on Zoom, where we practice and learn work and life skills while socializing, making friends, and having fun. All programs are free for anyone with a self-identified disability, and this includes all students with an IEP or a 504 plan. We also create videos and other content, and we are always looking for people who want to help both in front of and behind the camera. If you or someone you know is interested in participating, please be in touch. For more information on our programs, our daily social groups, and everything else we offer, please visit iacil.org or send an email to social@iacil.org. And now, here's the Independence Associates Baseball Special featuring Jared Carrabis of Barstool Sports.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of IA's Jock Talk. Today, we are privileged to be joined by Jared Carrabis of Barstool Sports and the Section 10 Baseball Podcast. What's up, Jared? How are you?
What's going on? How are we doing?
We're doing just fine. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course.
So, I'm going to come out right out of the gate and give you a chance to talk to us about the Red Sox rehiring Alex Cora and your thoughts.
So I felt like that this was a foregone conclusion. I knew that they would have like a legit search. I knew that they would actually go out and try and be able to at least explore other options. But even I knew that, you know, you can talk to whoever you want to talk to and line up other candidates. But at the end of the day, there's no candidate on planet Earth that was more qualified or better positioned to lead this Red Sox group. So I had confidence that it was going to be Cora regardless, and it ended up being Cora.
Jared, were there any other candidates being considered at all? And did Alex Cora's role in that cheating scandal give any apprehension to rehiring him?
Yeah, I think Sam Fold was like a legit candidate. Like I know he's pretty close to Trevor Plouffe, and Plouffe was saying on his podcast about how, you know, he was in contact with him the whole time, and you know, he wanted the job, and that he had you know, there were other teams that were interested in him, at least like interviewing for their managerial position, and he turned down interviewing for other jobs, and he was really interested in this one. So yeah, I think when it came down to those two, that there was a legitimate chance that it could have been Sam Fold. Obviously, he has a connection to Chaim Bloom in Tampa. But at the end of the day, I mean, you know, if the option is, hey, we can have this guy that knows this entire group and won a championship here, or we can hire a first-time manager. I mean, the answer is pretty simple, regardless of what, you know, Cora's involvement was in the Astros cheating scandal. And, you know, I feel like they kind of had a favor done for them by Detroit when, you know, the Tigers hired AJ Hinch right away. So it was like they didn't even have to be the first team to rehire someone that was linked to the scandal. It had already happened. So yeah, I mean, if other teams were kind of the same like-minded approach that, you know, everyone deserves a second chance, then, you know, if you're not going to, if the Red Sox weren't going to rehire Alex Cora, like someone was going to pick him up, and you might as well be the person that benefits from having him, because obviously he's a great asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any word as to whether Jason Varitek was interested in this job and what his future is? I know he's going to be a coach.
Yeah, so I think he's kind of said a little bit here and there that he wants his kids to kind of grow up before he pursues being a manager. I think he enjoys the aspect of Like right now, it's like he has the opportunity to help the Red Sox a great amount, and he does. And I don't even think that people realize how much he impacts the Red Sox still. Like we talked about in the last episode of Section 10, where we were saying how like, when Veritek was a catcher for the Red Sox and every pitcher talked about how prepared he was and how smart he was and he's the best catcher that I've ever pitched to. He still does those reports now. Like I remember during like the World Series, like he was going like all those like the super thorough, detailed pitching like scouting reports that he does for all of his pitchers when he was a catcher. He does those now for his pitch for like the Red Sox pitcher. So I think he's in a position right now where, and I don't know, I think he'd make a great manager. I just don't want it to be in Boston because it's just like too much scrutiny. Like the position is just too scrutinized, especially in this market. And I never want his legend or his name to be tainted in any way in Boston. It's like, if you want to go and manage somewhere else and, give it a shot, good for you. We support you. But as far as, putting yourself back in the line of fire in Boston when you're already an established legend, it wouldn't make me comfortable. And we were talking about like a shelf life and how, if you're in the position that he's in right now, there's really no shelf life. He can do that job forever. No one's going to be like, oh, wow, he didn't prepare. Like no one's blaming him for anything. No one's really giving him credit for anything either, but no one's blaming him for anything and calling for his job. If you become the manager, you started the clock on like, his days in this organization are now numbered because this is a job where if there's not results, then you get fired. So, I think eventually he will become a manager. I just hope it's not in Boston.
Well, Jared, you talk about shelf life, and obviously Theo Epstein has long talked about, shelf life. And what do you think his next move is? Because I personally think it's ownership.
Yeah, I think that would be, he's always looking for Theo Epstein is never looking for the next thing. He's always looking for the next big thing. And when he was in Boston, obviously he ended the 86-year curse, was not going to be named president of the team. So he goes to the Cubs and he's president of baseball operations over there. Like that's a step up. And then he ends the 108-year World Series drought in Chicago. So I think you're right. I think, how do you go up from there? And, I was kind of like needling Dallas about it, but I was like, why not go to the A's? Like, why not go to the team that everyone talks about how, they don't have enough money to contend with the big bad Yankees and Dodgers and Red Sox. And it's like, well, they've made it to the playoffs, I think 6 times since 2008. So, I mean, it's not like they can't get there. It's just a matter of putting together the right pieces. And I mean, Tampa Bay has been under the same financial restraints as Oakland has. And Tampa Bay's been to the World Series twice since 2008. They haven't won one, but I mean, they lost in 6. That's not like they got bulldozed by a really, really, really good Dodgers team. So I think it can be done. I don't know. Is it a combination of the two? Does he go somewhere that, you're taking a step up in terms of position, or is it something where he takes up a bigger challenge? Because what challenges after you've won the first World Series title in 86 years in Boston and the first World Series title in 108 years in Chicago, what bigger challenges lie ahead for you within the game? And I don't think that there is anything bigger than those two. There isn't. Like you could win one in Cleveland and like that's cool. They haven't won a World Series in a long time. But is Cleveland going to celebrate a World Series title the same way that Boston and Chicago did? No. Even if you go to Oakland and you win a World Series title with their payroll restraints, is that celebrated throughout not just Oakland, but throughout baseball the same way as those other two? No. So I think getting a little piece of ownership somewhere, that would be the next step up for Theo. I think it'd be cool if he got involved with the Mets or the Phillies or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely challenges left in Major League Baseball. I just don't know that there's a bigger challenge than any of the ones that he's already accomplished.
I mean, regardless, we can all agree that no matter what happens from here, he cemented his Hall of Fame, candidacy from the jump with Boston, but then to go and do it in Chicago was just icing on the cake.
Yeah, I think Chicago means more to his legacy because, if you go back and you look at that 2004 team, I mean, half, maybe more than half of that team was Dan Duquette. Yeah, Theo was the GM at the time, and he got all the glory. But a lot of those pieces were Dan Duquette pieces: Pedro, Manny, Veritek, Damon, Derek Lowe, Nomar, who eventually got traded. I mean, like a lot of those guys, Trot Nixon, were Dan Duquette guys. So, I mean, Theo got that World Series title in 2007, but it's almost like that World Series never even happened. Like nobody talks about that championship. Like everyone's like, yeah, Boston's strong in 2013, best Red Sox team in franchise history in 2018, and then the curse breaking team in 2004, and I guess 2007 was there too. It's the redheaded stepchild of not just Red Sox championships, but like all Boston sports championships. It's very strange. But then to go to Chicago, I mean, that team lost 100 games for like 3 years when he first got there. I mean, they had to be terrible for Theo to literally build that team from the ground up. Like you saw all the work that went into free agent signings, trades, drafts, international free agents, just everything. Like the way that they were able to build that championship team in 2016 was awesome. But it also is a little puzzling that they were only able to win one or even just get to one World Series. Like that was a core that I thought was going to do some damage for quite some time. And I think they kind of just got complacent. So, when you look back at Theo's legacy, it's like, yeah, he built a championship team in Chicago from the ground up, but he wasn't able to sustain that success. Like they got there, like they won division titles and they got to the playoffs and everything. But like once that complacency starts to sit in, that's a new challenge for a general manager. It's like, okay, we built this group, they won a title, but now I think they've kind of just fallen back on the fact that they've won a title. How do we shake it up? How do we keep the pieces that we need and get rid of the pieces that we don't need so that we can, we don't have to completely blow it up and start over, but there's definitely a formula here that we can go with so that we can win another title or at least get back to the World Series. And that just didn't happen. But yeah, like to your point, his Hall of Fame legacy is for sure cemented, but I think it goes without saying that the Cubs World Series is really what did it more so than the Red Sox one.
Just watched the World Series recently, and I had some, mixed feelings. I think, like most Boston fans, to watch Mookie Betts playing at such an unbelievable level. Did the Red Sox let modern day Willie Mays walk out the door?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they did. Yeah, I know that it's hard to explain to like casual fans. Like we get a lot of people that are like, how can you defend this? And it's like, because like I know that baseball fans don't want to be like talked to about billionaires and their financial restrictions, but like, like billionaires don't buy baseball teams to not turn a profit. So like you're trying to explain baseball and you're trying to explain like economics at the same time. And that can get tiring. And it's just, you're fighting a losing battle with a baseball fan that just is like, I just want to win. Like, I just want my team to win. Like, I want my favorite players to stay on my favorite team. And I want to win a lot of baseball games and celebrate championships. And it's like, yeah, for sure. But in the process of attempting to do that, there are things that aren't so fun. Like it's not like it's not supposed to be all good times. Like that's like name one good team besides the New England Patriots that have just had all good times. And now you're kind of seeing like what it's like when it's not good times. So with the Red Sox, it's like I get it. You don't want to hear about, well, why didn't you just pay me? Like, oh, so we're gonna get taxed and whatever. And it's like, yeah, but if you like what it boiled down to is if the Red Sox just paid Mookie Betts and kept him, if they paid him what the Dodgers did to stay and they went over the luxury tax again, then I think they would have gotten taxed at a rate that like Mookie would have cost the Red Sox like $100 million just in like the first 2 years of his deal, or like $120 million or something like that. So like, yeah, like, and what, as a fan, I'm like, yeah, he's worth it. Like, keep it. Yeah, whatever. But like, you know, you look at some of the team's financials and it's like, well, it's still a business. Like, you still have to be able to pay these players. Like, if you're an owner, you like, what is the benefit of like, I'm going to buy this baseball team. I'm going to have the largest payroll in Major League Baseball. We're going to win a World Series, but then I'm just going to like lose money. It's like, it doesn't work like that. So, I reluctantly understand it. It sucks. I wish it didn't happen. I wish that they were more careful previously, because I think what really screwed them was, you know, they give that extension to Chris Sale like when they didn't need to. If they had just waited until he was a free agent, then they could have gotten him at a way cheaper price. I love him. I thank him for what he did in the World Series, but Nathan Eovaldi, like that contract is trash. Yeah, I mean, like they spent a lot of dumb money, and to the point where when it came time to spend money on the right person, they didn't have any money left to spend because they had exhausted their financial limits, I guess. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people in the Red Sox that have big time regrets, and there are some people that aren't even with the Red Sox anymore who are responsible for why Mookie Betts is in a Dodgers uniform and not a Red Sox uniform for the rest of his life. So, yeah, I think unfortunately there will be a lot of professional sports teams, not just baseball teams, that kind of look at the Mookie Betts example and the road that the Red Sox took to get there and be like, this is what we need to avoid. Like, this is what, like, we can't just be throwing money at our problems for the short-term fix. Like, we have to project out years in advance. If we do this, if we do that, 3 years from now, can we still do this? And if the answer is no, then we have to make these decisions. I mean, I think that there were a lot of short-sighted decisions that were made that led to Mookie Betts not being in Boston anymore.
Well, Jared, first of all, thank you for being my baseball voice of reason, because I've argued that for years and years and years, and nobody seems to agree with me.
Yeah.
But, you know, that brings up an interesting question about John Lester. Can he come home again?
So
or will he?
I had this discussion with Steve on the last show, and I guess it depends on how you word it. Do I want John Lester back? Yeah, of course I do. I still think he has something left in the tank. I think it would be great to have him finish his career where it all started. But do I think that Chaim Bloom will even entertain the idea of bringing him back? I don't think so. I mean, not unless it's a good deal. And I think the indicator here is Martin Perez, right? So Martin Perez, he wasn't great, but he wasn't bad either in 2020. For $6.5 million, which is what it would have cost you to bring back Martin Perez, you could have had him at the $6.5 million option. You could have had Martin Perez back, and the Red Sox were like, pass. We don't want him. It's like, okay. So you think you can do better for cheaper, or you think you can use that $6.5 million elsewhere? Like you're gonna spend $10 million with the newfound money that you have. So I think, the idea of John Lester coming back is awesome and everything, but Chaim Bloom has no sentimental attachment to John Lester whatsoever. Like, you have to look at Chaim Bloom the same way you look at Bill Belichick. Like, they just don't care. Whatever fuzzy stories that we the fans have, these emotional attachments that we have to players, Chaim Bloom does not have. So he does not care. And I understand that, he brought back Alex Cora, but that was more so Alex Cora is just the best candidate for the job versus like, oh, the fans wanted him back. Like, the fans wanted Mookie and he's in LA. So I don't think he's totally just like reading Twitter and then making decisions based on what people want. I think the other thing on the other side of the ball, you kind of look at the market, and of course the Red Sox need pitching. Like, their pitching was terrible in 2020. I don't think Trevor Bauer's coming here. I don't know if you were going to ask that, but I don't think he's coming here. We can talk about that at length if you would like, but I don't think that Boston is his next stop. I don't think that means never, but I do think that he wants to go somewhere he can win a World Series next year, and I don't think that that's Boston if we're being objective about it. Marcus Stroman accepted the team qualifying offer. And then after that, there's really, like Masahiro Tanaka is the next best starting pitcher that's a free agent. I don't see him leaving the Yankees. So you kind of go down the list, and there's this tier, like Bauer's in a tier by himself. Then there's kind of like Stroman's in the tier after that, and then Tanaka's in the tier after that, and then after that, it's just like it's a bunch of like whatever. And John Lester at this point in his career is in the tier of, he's good, but like, he's not going to get a huge deal. He's not going to, as one pitcher, be the guy that turns around one franchise like the way that it was perceived when he went to Chicago. So I think it would be nice to have him if the plan is to be like a number 3 or a number 4. But even if you do get him here, I don't think that anyone's sitting there being like, great job. The work is done. We've completely fixed the rotation. The Red Sox are back. See you in the wild card. Like, I don't think that conversation's being had. So yes, I'd like him back. Yes, I still think he has something in the tank. I do think that the Cubs will value him more than the Red Sox do, but the Cubs are also in a position now where they're trying to offload money. They're not trying to spend money. So that's another kind of in the pros and cons list. That's a pro where the Cubs are trying to offload money, not spend money. So the team that would value him the most might not even be a suitor. So I don't know. Maybe I just talk myself into it happening. I don't know. I'm sure that there's a lot of teams out there that could use, some veteran pitching. So I don't know. Maybe the Red Sox kind of have a different plan, but it would make sense, I guess.
Well, Jed, I'm listening to you talking. Obviously, you've elevated to doing this, as a profession now with Barstool. But obviously, I think there's still a little bit of a fan, in there somewhere.
100%.
Absolutely. So, can we talk about how you've worked your way up from, starting out as a blogger to now being at Barstool and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. It's been a weird journey. It's been a weird ride because I feel like, like I'm 31 now, and I started doing this when I was 16. So like I've basically been doing this for half of my time on planet Earth, which is bizarre. I almost forget what it's like to not do this. But yeah, I started doing it as a blogger on MySpace because I didn't know how to run a website. I was like, I don't know what web hosting is. I don't have a website designer. I was like, what? You can post blogs on MySpace? Cool. We'll just do that. So yeah, that's where I started on MySpace. And then a buddy of mine had a merch store like website. So he built me a website because he had his own web guy. And like part of the deal was, hey, if I front the bill to build you your own website, then like, can you make the store on your website like my merch? And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't care. Whatever. Like, just help me build a website so I don't have to be on MySpace anymore. So that was how I got my first website. And I did that for a few years. And I think it was 2011 was when they had the New England Sports Blog Awards, and it was hosted by Dave Portnoy. And that was the first time that we met. And that night I won best Red Sox blog and best overall New England sports blog. And I think that kind of caught his attention. We kind of just kept in touch ever since then. And then after I finished college, I talked to Feidelberg, and we kind of started throwing around the idea of like, hey, do you want to be like the Red Sox guy for Barstool? And I was like, yeah. Like it was very similar to, because I had been reading Barstool since 2007, and getting asked to be the Red Sox blogger for Barstool was like, like when Jason Newsted was a huge Metallica fan, and then they just had an opening at bass, and they're like, hey, do you want to be the bassist of Metallica? And he was like, yeah. Like, you become the bassist for your favorite band. It was very similar. So I've kind of just been riding that wave ever since, but it's been crazy. Cause I mean, if you go back and listen to like the first couple episodes of Section 10, like I didn't know what I was doing. Like I wasn't comfortable at all, like speaking. Like I was used to just typing behind a laptop and not having to be like a front facing person whatsoever. But then it's kind of just trial by fire. Like you just keep doing it to the point where you get used to it and it becomes second nature to you. And before I moved to New York in 2017, I was doing Comcast, which is now NBC Sports Boston, with Lou Merloni. And we were doing the baseball show. It was me, Lou, and Evan Drellick, who's now my mortal enemy. But we were, doing TV. It's like you get comfortable on camera, and after a while, you're numb to it. And like I've always been like a big time introvert and like shy. Like I was class president in high school. I would never go up on stage and like address the class. I couldn't do it. I was like, the VP can handle this. I'm sick today. To now, like we do these like live shows before playoff games, and they're like Motley Crue concerts. Like we go up on stage and like the bar is packed like all the way to the back wall, and they go nuts like when it's playoff time. Like they were like, if you look at some of the footage of those like Section 10 live shows, like they look like the early Motley Crue like bar concerts. It's pretty crazy. Holy man, and he's 7 foot tall. It started out as me being a 16-year-old kid just writing blogs to like now we've got all these like different like digital shows and podcasts and like the interviews, the relationships that we've been able to build, and being on the duck boat for the World Series parade. And yeah,
pretty badass.
yeah,
Not gonna lie.
yeah. I mean, I hands down best day of my life. Like I just got this new place that I'm at now in July, and there's a lot of like wall space here, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take some pictures from the parade and like blow them up onto these like canvases. So now I've got like a bunch of like 3 feet by 5 foot canvases of just like me like slamming beers on the duck boat. And I'm like my dad came by one day and he was like he's like, have you had a girl here yet? Like what do they think like when they walk in your apartment and there's just like pictures of yourself on the wall? And I'm like, you know what, Dad, they're not pictures of me like a professional photo. Like it's pictures of the best day of my life. Like I can wake up in the morning, and if I'm having a bad day, I can look at that and be like, that was awesome. Or like, if you work hard enough, this is what can happen. Like you can end up on the duck boat of a World Series championship Red Sox team slamming beers with like the best hitter on the team. Like that's what you can do if you work hard enough. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a very strange kind of like prophecy. Like when I was in high school, I was the kid that I wore a Red Sox shirt every day for like 8 years. And I started doing that in high school. So like everyone knew me as like the Red Sox kid. And like if you talk to anyone that knew me back in high school and if they somehow like fell out of the loop and didn't know what I was up to today and you told them, they'd be like, yeah, no, that makes 100% sense. So like it has just been, I would say since I was in like 8th grade, 7th grade, like this is like I've been building towards this ever since then, like every day, like taking another step forward, um, trying something new or just like trying to just push forward every single day to get to this point. So I don't know what's next, but I would imagine it's going to be something pretty cool because now that I'm back in Boston after doing like, I feel like I basically did like jail time. Like I was in New York for 3 years, but now I'm back in Boston. Like I did my time. And now that we have access, like we got press passes at Fenway in 2018. I haven't lived in Boston and had press passes at the same time. So hopefully the pandemic stuff it's better by next year. Because before I had to like take a train back on Friday, go to the game Friday, Saturday, leave Sunday, and then work Monday. It was like this whole thing. So now that I'm back, I think it'll be a lot more manageable and we'll be able to do more like content wise with the players and kind of like take everything to the next level.
I mean, I definitely want to take a moment just to say, thank you on a professional level, but on a personal level too, because as you know, when we were setting this up, we were talking about, Ryan and I work for a disability organization, and obviously I'm a huge sports like honk to the point where Ryan actually makes fun of me on a daily basis for not getting involved in anything other than sports. But I guess my question is, what advice would you have for somebody, with a disability or somebody in general, even to get into this business? Because I think there's definitely space for us in the industry, but I don't think a lot of people take us seriously.
I think the best advice, and it's, I guess the answer is, it's the same thing that I would give to myself. Like if I could go back and talk to myself when I was like 16, 17, 18, like what advice would I give to myself? It would be to just be yourself, because when I first started, like I thought, I mean, like Barstool was a thing, but it wasn't like a career path yet. So I was like, if I'm going to actually do this for a career and make a living off of it instead of just having it be a hobby, then I'm going to have to like conform to a certain style that a newspaper or whatever is going to want me to sound like. And I did that. I did that for like a couple of years in the middle there, and I wasn't really getting anywhere with that. I mean, like the blog was popular, but like, how is it any different than like the Herald or the Globe or the Projo type deal? And I think around like 2012, I was kind of just like, you know what, I'm kind of like giving up on this being a career. I just want to do this for fun now. Like I'm gonna stop trying to, you know, it was almost like it was similar to if you're a pitcher and there were scouts that were coming to your games and trying to light up the radar gun when they came to see you. I just stopped trying to light up the radar gun. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this how I want to do it, and if people like it, great, and if they don't, I don't care. Like writing to me is almost therapy, like because my friends are all hockey fans, so it's like if I was like I would be, even if I'm not getting paid, I would still be writing about the Red Sox anyway, because like I have all these thoughts in my head and I need to get them out. And we just did it with the John Lester thing. It was a perfect example. Like you asked me the question about John Lester, and like I just started thinking out loud. And then by the end of it, I was like, yeah, maybe they could bring him back. But when you asked me the question, I was like, yeah, it's not happening. But then you go through all like you think about it, you go through all these reasons. So I would, yeah, I mean, like around 2013 is when I just wanted to have my own voice. And instead of trying to be like someone else, like Maz, I know that people, rag on him all the time for being a contrarian and whatever on radio. But back then, he was a great Red Sox writer, and he was a thought-provoking guy. And I was just like, all right, I need to stop trying to be like Maz. I need to, like, what does Jared sound like? Like, what do I sound like? And that's the other thing that I tell people too is, if you're going to stand out, you can't be a carbon copy of somebody else. And it's like, well, how do I find my true voice? And it's like, you talk about what you're passionate about, and you do it in the way that you would talk to your friends, like in private, like the way that I would, kind of like, I had, my best friends were hockey fans, but I played baseball. So I had friends that were, baseball fans. And it's like, when you talk about the Red Sox with other people that are passionate about the Red Sox, what do you sound like? And that's how I kind of like found my writing voice. And I think, for you, like, don't try and sound like you're a radio broadcaster, because you're not. Like, when I was trying to sound like I was in the press box, it's like, dude, you're not in the press box. Like, stop trying to sound like that. Like, what do you sound like from your vantage point? Like, I was in my mom's basement watching the games on TV. Like, how do you see the team through that lens? And for you, it's like, how do you, like, if you're covering all Boston sports, it's like, how do you see those teams through your lens, not through the lens that you think a potential employer would want you to see them through? So that's kind of the advice that I would give.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had just a few more questions about. So you talked about when you were growing up and you were wearing Red Sox shirts, and it seems like you're a huge baseball fan. Why baseball? What about baseball appeals to you the most?
It's a good question. I mean, like, I guess I just I stuck to what I knew. Like, it was the only thing I ever played. Like, I didn't play football. I was too little to play football. When I was a kid, I tried hockey. I hated it. We had season tickets to the Bruins originally before, like, we've had season tickets to the Red Sox since 98, but we had Bruins season tickets before that. And it was when the Red Sox traded for Pedro, and we had the opportunity. Like, my dad was like, well, I was like, they just traded for this guy, Pedro Martinez. He won a Cy Young Award. He's really good. We can do another year of the Bruins, or we can switch to the Red Sox if you want. And I was like, let's do the Red Sox. So, I mean, like, I loved the Bruins and I loved hockey, but like, I was obsessed with baseball. And like, I didn't know who Pedro was. I was in 98. I would have been 9 years old. But I mean, I watched every game, like, I watched every Red Sox game. So I wouldn't have known who Pedro Martinez of the Montreal Expos was, but I sure as hell got to know Pedro Martinez of the Boston Red Sox when he showed up in 98. So, I think I just started out as like, I play baseball. And then when we switched from the Bruins season tickets to Red Sox season tickets, it was like, and Pedro got there. And then, if you're a kid and if you're 9 years old and you get to experience like Pedro Day at Fenway, why would you ever pick another sport? Like, the atmosphere was like a city celebration. And every time that he pitched. And I remember, like, that's how, like, I hated school, and like, that's how my parents would get me to like do homework. That's how they would get me to clean my room, eat your vegetables. It's like they would just hang like Red Sox tickets over my head. They'd be like, hey, well, oh, you don't want to clean your room? That's fine. I mean, Pedro's pitching on Saturday. That's fine. No, we don't have to go. No, it's fine. We don't have to go. It's fine. Like, if you don't want to go, we don't have to go. I'm like, all right, I'll clean my room. And that's kind of, that was like a bartering chip that was used for my entire childhood. So, I mean, I've always loved baseball, and I don't know what my life would be if we never switched from Bruins season tickets to Red Sox season tickets. I'm sure I still would have loved baseball. I don't think it would have been the same if it wasn't that big of a part of my life, like that early on, like 9 years old. You're still very moldable as a human being. So yeah, it's literally always been a part of my life.
See,
Now, how
Ryan,
do you,
there's a benefit to being obsessed with sports. There is
Yeah.
a benefit.
Yeah, there is a big time benefit. And I've always said, because, back in high school, when I did like the Red Sox t-shirt thing every day, and I was doing like the blog every day. I remember one of the stories that I tell people um, about like the dedication part of it was, I think it was 2009, and I would have been a freshman in college. So I was at like a house party in the town next to mine. So I don't know how many miles that is from my house, my parents' house, but it was where I was living at the time. And it was a house party, had to have been a Friday or a Saturday night, or maybe it was during the summer. So maybe it wasn't even a weekend. But the news had broken about David Ortiz being on that list of like anonymous PED users or whatever. And I was like, this is a huge story. I am at my friend's house party. I am intoxicated. I don't want to get into a car with someone that's been drinking, and I am not going to drive drunk. But I have an audience that I've built up, and this is a huge story. And so I walked however many miles it was, from that house party back to my parents' house. I mean, it probably took me like, I don't know. It took me a long time to walk all the way back, but I was like, I'm gonna blog this. Like I have to blog this. So I took my drunk ass from this party and walked home to blog the Ortiz story. And it's like, that's the dedication that it takes. So when you said obsessed, like people would say that to me all the time, like, oh, you're obsessed. And they would try and say it as like an insult. I know that you're not, but like they would say it as an insult, like, oh, you're obsessed with the Red Sox. And then one of the big phrases that I always used was like, obsessed is just a word that the lazy use to describe the dedicated. And I was like, that's how, like, it takes dedication to get there. Like when all the old beat writers got pissed off that I was getting access to the Red Sox and like press passes and everything, like they were acting like I won the lottery and just got handed this thing. And it's like, oh, like he just has an audience and he just got handed these press passes. And it's like, dude, I've been doing this every day for half of my life. Like I have been doing this probably longer than some of the people in the press box have been doing it. So yeah, I think like that's another thing is just staying at it every single day, and like whether or not you're getting paid or not. Like I did it for 8 years without seeing a dime. And you got these other kids that'll reach out to me and be like, hey, I just started a blog. I've been blogging for 2 months. Can you get me a job at Barstool? And it's like, dude, I blogged for 8 years. I blogged for 8 years without getting paid. And when I did start to get paid, I got paid $500 a month. Like that's what I started. Like I was basically doing full-time work for Barstool, getting paid part-time $500 a month. And I was happy to do it. I was like, someone is giving me American currency in exchange for my words on the internet. Like that was cool to me. So I was like, all right, let's see where this goes. And like, obviously it's gone well since then, but it's because, you do have these people that are like in it for the money, or like they see like the success that some of like Big Cat or Dave, like Dave flaunts his money, and it's like, oh, I want to be like Dave, I want to have hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's like, that does not come overnight. Like it just really doesn't. So yeah, that's my rant on dedication.
I mean, Jared, I know Ryan has a few more questions, but like I said, thank you for doing this. And, thank you for being the resident New Englander who's not afraid to piss a couple people off and
In fact, I enjoy it.
be my inspiration for one, because I know that Evan Drellick got hurt over logic and reason,
He sure did.
but then Lou's great, and I've been fortunate enough over the years to meet a lot of good people. So I hope we can stay in touch and maybe work on a few projects down the line. But thank you to us and our consumers and everybody. Go check out Section 10 podcast and Jared's work on Barstool Sports. But Ryan, I know you got a couple questions, so
Yeah, I just have one more broad one. We'll get you out on this. And again, thank you so much.
No, I mean we can do like however long you guys need.
we could keep going for hours and hours and hours. Oh.
So Jared, like you, I grew up. I'm a couple of years, and Brian and I are a couple of years older than you. I grew up a huge Red Sox fan. I had the like the bunny ears on the small TV in my bedroom, and I'd watch every game on TV 38. We didn't have Nesson, so I had to listen to those on the radio. I think back to those years. I was so invested and so into baseball, and now just over time in my life, I've sort of felt myself drift away from it and towards other sports. I don't know. I was just interested in some of your thoughts kind of broadly on I spent a few years, about 5 years living in South Korea, and I used to go to baseball games there. They have cheerleaders, they have backflips, they have personality. I mean, it's a party, whereas if you do a backflip here, you get a 98-mile-an-hour fastball thrown at your head. Or like today with all the infield shifts, which I mean are obviously the right mathematical thing to do. But I was watching, the World Series, and things that were always hits in my lifetime are now just, routine outs. And the pace of play, of course, with the ADD generation. So just in general, what are your thoughts on sort of the health of baseball as a sport, and how do you see this going forward?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of peaks and valleys recently, like especially for our generation. Like we definitely saw a huge peak, in like the early 2000s or the late 90s, early 2000s, like the steroid era into like the peak of the Red Sox Yankee rivalry. And then there was like a little bit of a lull there. And I think we're kind of coming back up again though. Like I think like there were some MLB playoff games were outperforming NBA finals games, which, everyone points to the NBA as the gold standard of being able to market their players and Q score for their players and everything, which is still true. Like you could probably if you were to take the names of every NBA player and every MLB player and then power rank them based on their Q score, there might be two, if that, MLB players in the top 50. Like if you go through like the most popular athletes and combined MLB and NBA. But I think MLB is getting better, but still not where they need to be in terms of promoting their players. I think that they finally got the message that they're terrible at marketing their players. So I think we're now in the early stages of that realization phase. In the very, very early stages of the how do we fix this? What do we do about it phase? And, I think one of the biggest turns has been a guy like Trevor Bauer. But again, that's not the league doing something. That's one of the players being like, hey, if you guys won't do something, then I'll take it upon myself to do it, which is great that he is doing it. I mean, he created his own media company. And the fact that you had a perfect storm of quirky personality, a guy that won the Cy Young Award and cares enough to market the game to the point where he'll document his every move for a media company that he owns so that nothing is censored. Like that's just like the perfect storm of being able to market the game. But he's doing a great job marketing himself and making baseball interesting to other people. But it's one haymaker in a 10-round boxing match. Like it's, there's a long way to go before you can even consider yourself on the same playing field as the NBA. And, you brought up some points about, the pace of play and everything else. I don't necessarily think it's a pace of play thing. You mentioned like the attention span. It's not so much the length of the game, it's the length of time in between action in the game.
Yeah.
Because the NFL is king in America, and the length of those games are the same as Major League Baseball games. It's just like, and you could make the case that like there's the amount of downtime in football as there is in baseball, but I think it helps that there's 16 regular season games versus 162. It helps that they are much bigger stars, the NFL players. People love playing fantasy football. Like that's a huge thing. So even if you're not even, you can't even name one player on your own team, but you can name all the players on your fantasy team. Like there's plenty of people like that. Not that fantasy baseball isn't fun, but like being able to like people, if anyone on planet Earth should play fantasy baseball, it's me, and I don't. Like I can't. It's every day. Like who has time to manage it? It's like feeding a goldfish. I don't have time to do that every single day. I get the appeal of the NFL, and it's like football has its own day of the week, and baseball it's a grind. It's every single night. Especially like this year, I didn't take any days. It measured out to be from, I think it was like opening day to the end of the World Series. I didn't take any days off because it was an abbreviated season. So I ended up working like 100 straight days. And imagine just being a fan, like dedicating that much time. Like I do it happily. Like I am more than happy to sit there every single night and watch not just, I mean, it's evolved now to where, I started off covering the Red Sox and now it's the whole league. So I don't know if you've seen the videos of like my like media room upstairs, but I have 6 TVs on the wall, and I'll sit there at 7:00 and I'll finish up at 1:45 in the morning. And I will have watched at least some action from every single game that was played every single night. Like that's a lot. And like baseball is more of a regional sport, like football, a football fan is more likely to sit down and watch a game between like the Bengals and the Lions or whatever. If you're from Florida, and with baseball, you're just going to watch your team. And that's reflected in the postseason ratings. Like everyone's going to watch the Super Bowl. Everyone's going to watch the AFC, NFC championship games. Like that's like, it's its own thing. And it takes one day. It takes 3 hours of your time to determine who will be representing the AFC and the NFC in the Super Bowl. You're like, I remember we were doing live streams for the playoffs this year. So we did a live stream. I think the first one that we did was 10 and a half hours long because it was on the first day the playoffs started. It was game 1 was at 2 p.m. And then like by the end of the day, it was over at like 1:30 in the morning. So like baseball is much more of a time commitment. Even if you're a diehard fan, it's a huge time commitment. But even as a casual fan, like I get it. And it's the summer months where, you want to be outside having fun, like enjoying the weather. And football is like, well, it's freezing outside. So what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to stay inside and watch football. So there are some things that baseball can do to fix itself in terms of popularity and appealing to a younger audience. But then like things like that, there's nothing you can do about the fact that baseball is played during the time of year that everyone wants to be outside, and football is played during the time of the year that everyone wants to be inside. The fact that football has its own day of the week and baseball is every day. So like it's kind of overkill to a lot of people. So in that sense, I don't think that they'll ever be able to compete with the NFL, but I do think that they can do a much better job of marketing their players and appeasing to the younger fan base. And I don't necessarily think that it's a matter of changing like these drastic changes to the game. Like, if the average length of a game goes from 3 hours and 15 minutes to 3 hours and 7 minutes, have we cured baseball's problem? No, we haven't. So it's not about how long the games are. I think it's more about creating more action within those games. And I think the juiced baseballs, like everyone's like, oh my God, the baseballs are juiced. Like this is like, who cares? Like what saved baseball in the 90s?
Yeah.
Homers. Like they're like, can you not see what they're doing here? Like they're creating more action and they're bringing back like, they're like, okay, so we can't juice up our players anymore. So like, let's juice up the balls. Like if people want action, then yeah, I think that helps a lot. So like, you know, you have more homers, there's more excitement, and you have these younger players hitting homers, and we get rid of the unwritten rules where players can't be flashy. You create more viral moments that can go on the internet where all these young people are. Like where do you think the young people are? Oh, they're on Twitter, they're on TikTok, they're wherever, on Instagram. So if you're creating a game that can create viral moments that can be then placed in front of the young people, then the young people will seek out your content. So I think we're in a good place. I think Major League Baseball needs to do a better job of allowing highlight sharing. Like they'll just straight up delete your account unless you're John Boy for whatever reason. They just like let him post whatever he wants. But like if I post it, they're going to delete my account. They need to be more lenient about highlight sharing because that's what's going to reach the younger audience and then pique their interest to then circle back to actually watching the sport.
I think the most viral baseball video on the internet is forever going to be Randy Johnson literally murdering a bird by accident. But, you know, that 98 season literally brought me back to baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do something. But Jared, thank you a million times.
Of course.
I had one last question for you, Jared. Where can people find you?
So I think my Instagram is just my name, one word, and then Twitter is Jared_Carrabis.
Awesome.
I think that's where I had originally found you, Jared, was on Twitter.
There you go. I spent a lot of time there.
But yeah, thanks.
Of course, guys. Anytime. Happy to do it. I enjoyed it a lot. We'll do it again. And hopefully they allow fans at Fenway next year. We can all get together.
We should.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Take it easy, guys.
All right, bye.